15.
All right, we got 15 cards left. 2 minutes is 30 minutes. I'm going to let you decide what to do. If you decide to say no more questions, Mitch, answer the ones that you have, we could do that. Hey, just wait a second. Let me finish, please. I'm going to answer every question that everybody asked, or I'm going to get you an answer to it. So I need to have time to do that because we're supposed to end the meeting at 8. Now, if y'all want to keep going, I'll stay here until everybody has a chance to ask that question publicly and I answer it publicly, or we can stop taking questions now. I'll answer all the questions. And for those of you that have questions that you want answered, I will be happy to stay personally and answer those questions. I'll put you in touch with somebody who could answer it. So why don't we have a show of hands? This is your meeting. You're going to direct whether or not we stay. So all the people that want to end the public questioning, because we're going to take the private questions, raise your hand and tell me if you want to do that. For those of you that want to stay for another half hour and listen, then let's do that. All right. One more time. All the people that want to end the questions now and then have all the private, all the folks that want to go on. All right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to try to respond to each one of the questioners that asked me. For those of you that have a card up here that need a question answered, please stay after. I will stand right here. And if you guys will form a line, I'll take you in the order that the questions are. We'll have somebody hitting here, and then we'll get an answer to your question, but either before you go or tomorrow. Fair enough? All right, great. Well, maybe, but, you know, everybody wants a chance to be heard, and some people want to be heard, and some people just want a problem fixed.
That's what he's getting ready to do.
I'm sorry. I'm going to now answer every question that was asked. Okay? Can we do that? All right. Oh, I'm going to try, at least to respond to them if I can, and I will try not to be long-winded because my staff says I have a tendency to be long-winded. Now, this is the first time Miss Barbara Founders ever spoke in less than 30 seconds, so give Barbara a round of applause. Right? And so I'm going to try to do the same thing because, first of all, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your tone and the civility and the questions. I thought they were all excellent. And so I'm going to try to run through some of these things. I'm going to tell you now I don't know the answers myself to all of these questions, so I may point you to somebody over here that you can walk over to after the meeting and direct you to them so that they can give you more information. And I'll call them by name, and then you guys can get together, and then you can figure it out, okay? Miss Barbara's got a cane. All right. Now, there are a number of people, and I will call you by name, and then I won't repeat the answer for you, that talked about the issues of streets. All right, so let me talk about that generally, and then I'll try to deal with them specifically. We have a couple of major infrastructure challenges that we do not have immediate answers to right now that we're all going to have to talk about. They're two big ones. One of them is streets, and the other is sewer. Your city right now, as a result of a long history of a bunch of stuff, and Katrina, and Marcia St. Martin's here from Sewage and Water, but Marcia, where are you? All right, is bleeding about 40% of our water every day, right? We have holes in the pipes that are bleeding. Some of that was caused by Katrina. We think a lot of it. Some of it was caused before we got here. And so we continue to work really hard to plug every one of those holes as soon as we find it. And we continue to fight with FEMA about replacing that system. But let me kind of shock you. That's a $14 billion number. So we got to think about that. Now, you know the consequence of this because y'all told us this, and it's true. It's been true forever. Sewage and Water Board runs out there, fixes a hole. Right after the Streets Department made a new street, then we got a real problem. Nobody goes back out there, and then we got another pothole, right? So none of y'all actually, well, I think one person mentioned it. There's got to be a much better coordination between the Department of Public Works, Deputy Mayor for Infrastructure, Cedric Grant, stand up, please. Cedric Grant, right, and his entire team, and Marcia St. Martin, who you met, and they are working together every day to get better at coordinating. But I need to tell you this. This is like going to the doctor and him giving you bad news. We got a lot of work to do on rebuilding the infrastructure in the city and finding the money to do that and then triaging it, because you told me already what you know. There's a ton of work going on streets. But guess what? It's the major streets. We as a city, Mayor Nagin, this administration, other administrations said, look, we got to get the major streets back up and operating. So Claiborne Avenue is getting redone. right? You see De Gaulle getting redone all over the city. We're turning dirt and we're doing it as fast. But not surprisingly, each of you come up and say, well, wait, what about my street? What about my specific street, either in my subdivision or in the corner that I live in? They're all in terrible shape. Now, I know that the Westbank thinks they have the worst streets, but Lakeview thinks theirs are worse than yours. Lower 9 thinks they're worse than all of y'all. It's a huge problem. We don't have the answer to it yet, because the answer at the end of the day is finding a bucket load of money, right, that comes in over a long period of time, and then making sure that we have a reasonable program to rebuild streets, 1 street, 2 street, 3 streets at a time. So we're going to do that, and we're going to put a proposal before you in the next whenever to try to figure that out. But that's a big, big problem that's going to cost a bucket load of money and take a lot of time, and that's just the truth. Now, in the meantime, we all have some catastrophic events that are occurring on specific streets. There are some big potholes. There's some dangerous situations. So I've sent this team to the neighborhoods where all the schools are. And let's get that figured out first, because we kind of know we got to get the kids to school and we got to be safe. And then after that, we've got to get ourselves organized so that if you call, if there's a pothole that's really kind of bad, that we can get to it right away. And so for those of you that have specific requests tonight, I'm going to give that to Cedric Grant. He's going to talk to the streets department about it, and then y'all should touch base with them before you leave. So, Ms. Carolyn DeBartolo, you basically told us that. You told us about the Bocage subdivision, right? We understand that. That falls into the category of tough stuff. But if you wouldn't mind, before you leave, if you will download to staff the specific one, right, we'll follow up with you. All right, Kevin, on Opelousas Street in Berman, you talk about trimming trees, and you talked about the park, and you talked about the ferries. Where's Kevin? Oh, he's right here. You didn't talk about the ferries, but you put it on the list. So in any event, that's something that we can do something about. So in terms of trimming trees, right, Cedric, Park and Parkways, where are you? Ann McDonald, stand up. Ann McDonald runs Park and Parkways for the city. If you have a specific request, after I mention it, please, she'll stay after. Please talk to her about it, and so we'll get you an answer on that. Now let's talk about the memorial. We can help fix. Let's talk about the ferries for a second. So one very bold gentleman, right, who obviously is never going to run for office, said, I think they ought to keep the tolls on the bridge. All right? I happen to agree with that. But I want to tell you why, all right? And I want to tell you why I think that, and then you can string me up if you want. I want you to hear me when I tell you, and I want you to remember that I told you this, because I want to be able to tell you I told you so. When you have folks in Washington, D.C. that say, I want to cut, and you have folks in Baton Rouge that say, I want to cut, I'm not saying government's not too big. It is. I'm not saying that government's not inefficient. It is. I'm not saying there's not waste in government. There is. But it's also true that if you direct government spending well in the right direction, you can produce good things. Now, the reality about what you need is somewhere in the middle, but I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen. And the reason I know is because I talked to the governor's secretary of transportation today. And she asked me, what about these ferries? And I said, well, Madam Secretary, you tell me about the ferries. She said, you know, they cost $3 million a year or more. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, you know, we pay for them in part from the tolls on the bridge. I said, yes, ma'am. I know that too. Remember, I was in the legislature? She says, I do. And she said, so what are we going to do? I said, well, what do you mean we, Tonto? She said, well, look, you know, they go off in 2012, and there's going to be a big fight about whether to keep them on. I said, well, Madam Secretary, let me ask you a couple of questions. I said, if the tolls of the bridge come off, what is the consequence of that? She said, well, she said, you know that everybody that wants something is going to have to go to the legislature. Senator Heitmeyer's here. Senator, where you at? He's in. Senator Heitmeyer showed up. It's nice to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Y'all going to go to Senator Heitmeyer and say, Senator, you need to protect us. You need to get us our money. And he's going to have to fight with every other legislator in the state to get an appropriation in the bill to fund things that right now the tolls fund. Now, I'm just telling you, if the tolls go off the bridge, if that's what you want, you can have whatever you want, is what I'm telling you. The consequence of that is they're going to come down here and say, well, guess what? We can't fund the police. We can't fund whatever. We can't fund these, you know, on-ramps and off-ramps. We can't fund the improvements on the bridge. And by the way, I'm really sorry, we can't fund the ferry. Now, maybe we can fund it if somebody who rides the ferry pays $1, or maybe not. But I'm here to tell you, as your mayor, that you can't put gas in a car with air. All right? And it's all about budgets and money and then priorities. So look, it really is at the end of the day up to you. I can tell you as a legislator, I voted for the tolls. I can't ever run away from that. And I'm telling you now that it's going to be much easier to fund things as it relates to transportation down here if they stay on. If not, there's a possibility that we could argue for the money and battle for it. Jackie Clarkson was in the legislature for a long time. Senator Heitmeyer does a great job. But we're going to have to go to battle. But it's going to be a lot harder. I can tell you now, though, that those ferries cost $3 million to operate, and everybody that gets on them doesn't pay a nickel. In terms of how much? 9? I'm sorry, Senator, forgive me. See, I'm glad he's here. $9 million a year. That means taxpayers from around the state have put money in the general fund, and they're sending it down here for ferries. Now, we have a good argument like everybody else, but it's not a sure thing. You got to fight every day. And so when the governor says, I'm going to reduce the size of the state budget, I'm doing across-the-board budget cuts, and everything gets cut, then all of a sudden the ferries get cut. So y'all have to think about that. And I just kind of throw it out there to you. And then at the end of the day, I'm sure your legislators and your senators, and we will kind of do what you tell us. But we need to tell you what the consequences are of that. All right. Miss Irene, thank you so much. Commander Couts, where are you? She said Commander Couts was awesome. I agree. Thank you so much for your service. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, Miss Barbara. Miss Barbara, increased police pay. We do a better job of hiring because you get a better product, and we really kind of got to screen people better. The streets are awful, and I want my ferries, right? The ferry for the dollar option. Excellent. Thank you. And keep the tolls. Thank you. But you didn't say that. You're sneaking stuff in on me. Right, exactly. She said if you pay nothing, you get nothing. But she had 5 points. Increased police pay, better job of hiring. The streets are terrible. And on the ferries, everybody pay $1 and keep the tolls, right? Okay, a couple of things. First of all, I hired this guy to help transform the police department. He's a smart guy. Born and raised in New Orleans. Did a lot of good things when he was here. Left, ran the state police in Washington State for one of the best governors at the time in the nation, and then went to Nashville and did a great job. And he knows how to fix things, and so that's why we hired him. And one of the things he's got to do now that he doesn't know the answer to yet, but he's in the process of doing it, by the way, using a lot of good technology, is figuring out, based on good data, how many police officers we have per capita and how many we really need. Now, everybody initially thinks the more police officers you have, the better you're going to do. That sounds right, and it could be, but it might not be right. Or we have these police districts that are carved up a certain way that look like legislators gerrymandered them in reapportionment. It could be that those districts are not cut right. Let me give you an example in my neighborhood. I'm from Uptown, 13th Ward, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. The 2nd District and the 6th District are side by side. But when you look at the crime patterns, when a bad guy commits a crime and he runs across the police district, so we have 2 districts chasing him, just because the neighborhoods have changed. So Chief Surpass is using a lot of good data right now, and he's going to come back and he's going to talk to us about, look, this is what I think I need to secure the city. And we're going to find a way, notwithstanding what you told me about 58%, and I want to get back to that in a little while because y'all got to make a decision about this, of saying how many police officers do we need, right? If they're good, listen to this, Miss Barbara, if they're good, if they've been hired well, and if they're deployed well, then how many do you need? As opposed to if you don't hire well and you don't deploy well, how many do you need, right? And so the same thing's true, Timmy, and you guys about the fire department. We're going through that analysis right now, and the reason why you should know that we're serious about it is because we told you we were going to do that on data as it related to other stuff. So in this book that you see, NOLA Stat, if you look at what we've done there, you know that we're heading in the right direction, and we will be able to report back to you our best guess of how many we need. Now, this is a long answer, but it's important. Our police pay is very competitive in New Orleans. Yes, ma'am, it is. Chief? Yes or no? You can call me a fibber if you want. You have the freedom to tell me I'm wrong. Not, thank you, Chief. Not on this one. I told that the reason I know the answer to that question is because I'm a good lawyer. You don't ask a question if you don't know the answer. I had him go back and say, tell me what they're doing in Atlanta. What are they doing in Jefferson Parish? What are they doing in St. Bernard? What are they doing in St. Tammany? What are they doing in Houston? What are they doing in San Diego? Blah, blah, blah. Guess what? We're very competitive. Now, we can always be better, but police pay, even though everybody wants more, is not out of sync. So here's the thing. If you're recruiting somebody and somebody's paying a lot more than you, and then next door, chances they're going to go over there. We can always get better on a bunch of stuff, but that doesn't seem to be the big thing. Now, on numbers, right, remember this. Back in 1996, 97, 98, we had 465,000 people. We had a certain number of officers, right? And if you look at the number from 1990 through now, we got 343,000 people in the city now. And the number's not that whole lot different. So if you start asking two questions, per capita, how do we do with other cities? We're pretty good. If you ask in terms of land mass, because we're wide and we're big, maybe a little bit less. But we got to look at that and 15 other things, and then deployment, and then we're going to get the police department right-sized, well-supervised, well-trained, well-recruited, and then they're going to protect and serve. That's our mission. We want the best police department in the country, and these guys are going to help deliver it to us. And so we're going to keep working on that. Correct. That's correct. Ms. Barber says if you give them more play, they won't have to do the details, and that's the problem. And there's some truth to that as well. We know that, and we're redoing the detail system, and we're working with the Department of Justice to get that done. Am I good? Yes. Thank you so much. All right. Connie, excellent point. She says, look, you got these ferries, you got these buses. What sense does it make to take the ferry someplace where the bus isn't? So could you connect them? Right? That makes common sense. Great point. And one of the things we spend a lot of doing is breaking down the walls between and amongst all the different agencies. So Justin, where are you? Regional Transit Authority. Okay. He's the guy that's going to be the point to talk to the State Department of Transportation that are not here, but we'll talk to our legislators about that. And David, maybe you can help us put that together. It's an excellent point. And by the way, I'm going to get later, but I'll talk about it now. The city needs to be much more bike friendly, right? I can tell you, if you go to, I want to tell you that, Marcia, hold your ears, but I live around Claiborne Avenue, and they were redoing Claiborne, so I called Joe and said, Joe, when y'all doing that thing, they got those big Nutri-Grounds, can you put bike paths on it? He goes, oh, no, we can't do that. That's a state highway. That's just a long time ago when I was a legislator. I said, that doesn't sound right to me. Oh, no, the street's too dangerous. You can't have blah, blah, blah. Not bike friendly. 15 years ago. The world has changed dramatically. But if any of you have been down to where Ground Zero is around in New York, this is New York City. This is where the cab drivers will kill you if you get in their way. All right? They'll roll over you. All that new development down there, their bike paths on the busiest streets in the United States of America, they have found a way to do bike lanes. If any of you have been to Chicago, they have bike lanes all over it. Now, Chicago's a lot bigger than us, and so is New York. 8 million people in Manhattan, 3 million people in Chicago, a lot more cars, and they figured out a way to make it happen. You know what? We can too. And we're going to do that with transportation. All right. Ricky Pierce. Ricky, where are you? First of all, thank you for your service. Give him a round of applause. Louisiana National Guard. Somerset Drive, you're the second person tonight that talked about that. There's somebody else. We got to get out there and take a look at it because that seems like a temporary repair absolutely has to happen. I can't give you any commitment on long term. I talked to you about the road problem. We got to talk about it, and we got to figure that out. Mr. Hubble, thank you so much. I talked to you a minute ago. You talked about ferries. You talked about the bridge tolls. Yes, indeed, Algiers is great. I'll say it to the whole city. I love it. I think it's really a special, special place, and I think that y'all ought to be really proud of it. And there's a lot of great stuff going on over here. You have great leadership. You have a great community, and that's the kind of stuff that really works at the end of the day. Coordination. I would encourage you all to speak with and to each other more, to get together, and then to come up with constructive solutions. You know, sometimes people get frustrated and you can yell at me, and that's okay. You know, that's what I'm here for. But at the end of the day, what I really need is help finding a solution because I want to find a solution, and this team wants to find a solution. So if you can help us do it, and I keep reiterating the fact that pressure is going to come down and it's going to be less money, but that doesn't mean we can't do more stuff. Because what you find is new partnerships, right? You get into the private sector, think about that. You think about relationships with the not-for-profit sector. You can find a whole bunch of ways to do what we did before. We're going to have to find a way because I think the reality is there's going to be less rather than more in the future, and we just got to figure out how to get it done. So I thank you. I thank you for that. And Mr. Hubble, on the Hubble Library, we have some news for you. Kristen, you want to? Was that this July, Cedric? All right. On the Hubble Library, the bids went out in July, right? Construction's going to start in October, and the library is going to open in January. God bless you, and thank you for that. All right, Ron Goldman. Whoo, I'm so happy to see you. I had a busy day today. I talked to the Secretary of DOTD and actually had a meeting about Brecktail Golf Course today with Jackie Clarkson. Stand up, Jackie. Let him see you again. Jackie's in my ear all the time, right? And Kristen yesterday, both of them were in my office, and we were talking about Brecktail Park. So I want to say two things about it. First of all, that park, I'm not going to talk about the golf course, I want to talk about the park for a second, is a spectacular and wonderful asset. And we all have to think about how to make it really nice. So we think about regional parks. So Audubon Park is beautiful. It's got a beautiful, nice, new executive golf course right in the middle of it. It's got a walk path around it. People can do a bunch of stuff with it. City Park's being redone right now. We're working on getting Joe Brown Park done right now. Brecktail Park's got to be like that, right? That's kind of where we need to go. Now, on the Brecktail golf course part of that, Lakewood's right next door, kind of, sort of, not too far away from it. And the idea is whether or not the city ought to put an 18-hole golf course back at Brecktail Park or something else. And so right now, we're open to listening to what you want to do with it. There have been some suggestions that we don't need an 18-hole golf course, that it would really be nice to have a 9-hole executive golf course with a really great driving range, which there is no place else in the city, and then a youth golf center. Now, that's a different idea. So here's what happens. New ideas come in. The bids were already out in terms of designing an 18-hole course. I told them to stop. Don't do that just yet. So now everybody wants stuff done fast. I'm telling you, I told them to stop because I'm not sure that rebuilding an 18-hole course is the right thing to do. And we're going to take about 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. We're going to talk about what's going to be there. If you ask me today, I mean, really, I would say, that if we want to become a golf destination, by the way, which is a great thing because it generates a huge amount of tourism and a lot of money, and we want to make sure that locals still have the ability to play, especially seniors, you might want to think about putting something a little different there than what has been there before and making sure Brecktail Park is a state-of-the-art park. And so I'm open to hearing from all of you about what you want to do with that and working with Kristen and Jackie, right, to make that happen. Okay? Thank you. I do play golf. I'm terrible. I'm awful. And then I hate the fact that I'm awful, but I love it. All right, Donald Costello, where are you? Stand yourself up. Cedric, would you see him before he leaves and tell me in a couple of days that you called him back and listen to what he thinks he knows? I can't let you. Because if you do, everybody else does. Thank you. But you can tell me after. I'm going to stay here. Would you please come and you would do that? Thank you so much. But I want to know that he got a phone call back. Now, I'm not telling you that everything you tell them they're going to say yes to, right? You just want a phone call back and you want to tell them what your thoughts are about a number of different issues, especially relating to roads, how we fill potholes. You're not the only person that thinks that pothole filler doesn't work or that it's not done the right way, but we have people checking on it, and I want to know because when you fill a pothole, you want it to last for a little while, right? We filled, 28,000 potholes in the city in this year? So it's something that we're clear about. Now, I will tell you one thing, by the way, since I brag about myself about that number. On catch basins, we stink. We never came close to hitting our marks on catch basins, not even close. So I went back to my deputy mayor's meeting when I got those stats, and I read them the Riot Act, and I said, wait, you told me that if I told the city council that they gave us this money, we would do this many catch basins. This number says that you didn't hit your mark. You better find a way to get there. That's why that document is a good document, because by the end of this year, we're going to hit our catch basin number, right? They came to me and they said, well, the truck doesn't work, so we'll get another truck, right? Because those catch basins have to be fixed. And Cedric, he told us something that we already know, that when they repave the streets, this is about coordination streets, if you put cement on the catch basins, the water can't get in them, right? Is that right? So that doesn't make any sense. So we're going to fix that. All right. Let's see. Mr. Skiro, emergency health care. I want you to meet Dr. Karen DeSalvo. Karen, where are you? Dr. Karen DeSalvo, our health care commissioner. All right. Now, one thing that we do have that we didn't have before the storm is 88 primary health care clinics. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the best in the country. While everybody's fighting about health care and people are suing President Obama and people are having their opinion about all of that, the one thing that everybody agrees on, right, is that we have to have preventative care and we have to have access to care. Common ground, right? Amen to that? And so one of the things that we've been able to do, and Dr. DeSalvo has led this effort. She was at Tulane before she came here, but she was the initiator and worked with a lot of people. We have 88 primary health care clinics in the metropolitan area. Most of them are in New Orleans. They saw 350,000 patients last year. And so she is the point person to talk about access to health care, not only on clinics, but I know somebody else talked about Joe Ellen, right? And Kristen wants to respond to that in a minute, and I'll let you do that when we get to that thing. But Dr. DeSalvo is the one that Common Ground, Newton, you guys talked about that. Karen, would you stand up again so they can see you? Touch base with her after it, and we'll talk to you about our plans for that. All right? Patricia, Common Ground. Where are you, Miss Patricia? Thank you. I'll introduce you to Dr. DeSalvo, if you wouldn't mind, and thank you so much for your advocacy. It's really important. I want you guys to know, just to give you an example of how well this works, the St. Thomas Health Clinic that's on Magazine Street right now is one of our clinics that's doing a tremendous amount of work. They are doing mammogram screenings for folks that don't have health insurance. They do about 300 or 400 a month. Isn't that wonderful? And Dr. Irwin and his team is doing a really good job. And so I want to thank them for that. All right, Van Jones, question. Are we applying? I think Kristen Palmer asked you to ask me this. Did you put him up to this? Tell the truth. All right, are we applying for Tiger 3 grants? Right, you asked me this. For those of you, I don't know if you know this issue, but if you drive down Howard Avenue, Loyola, right, it crosses Parger Street, you will see that they began construction on a new streetcar line. All right, we were able to do that because we got funding from something called Tiger Grants. This is an initiative that President Obama passed to help do transportation across the country. We applied for it, we won, and that's proof that we got the money and it's in the ground. And so streetcars are really important. All of a sudden, we're back in vogue again. People from all over the country are calling me and say, how'd you do that streetcar stuff? And by the way, can you manufacture streetcars? And I told these guys, let's get we're going to manufacture streetcars. You know those wooden benches y'all sit on? We got a couple guys that actually make those things, right? They make them right on Oak Street and Carrollton Avenue. If you want to see guys that do better work than anybody else in the world, you go over there and see the handiwork. And so folks are calling us from all over the country, Denver, et cetera, because people are going to a common transportation, and we're going to be the leader in the country on that. So that's an example of a Tiger grant. There's Tiger 1, there's Tiger 2, and there's Tiger 3. Now, we have been where's Miss Osborne? Miss Osborne, stand up for a second. This is Carol Osborne. And so I'm about to say it's going to embarrass her, but her daughter, Beth Osborne, all right, Algiers girl, right? All right, works for the federal secretary of transportation. So it's up to her whether we get a Tiger grant or not. No, you can say that. You can say that. Beth has been an incredible help. Every time I go up there, she gets me in Secretary LaHood's office, and I get in his ear and tell him about everything that we need. You gave me 2 issues. One, we're going to have a hard time getting a Tiger 3 grant. Yes, we're going to apply for it. But they kind of said, we've given you Tiger 1 and Tiger 2, and we don't like giving people money until you finish the projects that we gave you money for. And so there's going to be another round after that. So we're applying. They kind of said, well, you can apply. We can't tell you not to. And I told my team, apply anyway, right? So we're going to do that. Now, the issue is, are we going to be able to get money to take the rail line, right, down the street and into the 9th Ward? And in order to do that, the streetcar line has to go over a railroad track. Now, we're in a big legal fight with the railroad. Which one is it, Justin? Norfolk Southern owns that railroad. They also are the same people that say, well, you might not be able to run on the river because you go across a railroad track. And we're in a fight right now about whether or not we have the right to cross that railroad line without that permission or with that permission. And I got my city attorney, Nanette Jolivet, stand up. This young lady is going to be a federal judge in 30 days. She's President Obama's nominated her to the bench. Everybody except the Senate has signed off on it. They're expected to do it in 30 days. She'll be the first African-American female for the Eastern District in the history of Louisiana to be the. Thank you. So anyway, Nanette is drafting a legal opinion right now to see whether or not we can fight with Norfolk Southern and win, or whether or not the law is settled and we can't. Now, if we can't cross the railroad, right, track, we will take the streetcar as far into the neighborhood as we possibly can, and then maybe be really smart, and instead of going across it, just make everybody get off and get on again. I don't know. I would like to find a way to do it, and we're working really hard, and Kristen's really pushing hard, so we'll keep doing that. All right. You already talked about access to bike lanes. Absolutely. We need to do a lot more of that. I've directed our streets department to work with DOT to say any way you can put a bike lane safely, we ought to do that, because this city is look, the one thing that one of the things that people adore about our city is that it's so small. I know we don't think it is. I know like people from the Westbank don't like going to the East Bank, and the people from the East Bank think, how am I going to go to the West Bank? But you know, in other places, they don't have that problem. You know, people cross bridges all the time. They do it in Chicago every day. They do it in New York every day. We got a thing about it. And I don't know how to get rid of that thing, but I'm just telling you, it would be good if we did. You know, and in neighborhoods too. I can't cross over into that neighborhood. Yeah, you can. If you take the walls down and build bridges and build pathways, people will start doing that. And so we want to connect neighborhoods, and we want to make it easy. You know, it's really not that far physically from the lake all the way down Canal Street. You got to jump in the river and swim across it. I've tried it a whole bunch of times. It doesn't take you too long. And just get right across on the Algiers Point. Right, take the ferry. That's only 3.5 miles. Do you know that? I talked to a lady the other day when I was in Chicago. She worked for the Hyatt Regency. You know, she gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning. She commutes an hour and 45 minutes on public transit to work every day. Would anybody in this room commute an hour? It's against our religion. I don't know what religion everybody is, but I know we don't do that. Right? So there are other practices that we have to kind of think through, but making the city accessible, allowing the neighborhoods to talk to each other, making the transportation easy. And by the way, this is regional too. You know how we used to do transportation? Like we didn't want those people from Jefferson Parish, or they didn't want us going across to the North Shore. The world's changing, you know. We got to kind of make it easy for people to get where they're going, and we're going to keep doing that. All right. Martha Boudreau, Fund Nord Maintenance. I love you. Where are you, Miss Boudreau? Okay, you are so smart. We're building all these buildings, right? We built a beautiful school down the street. Landrieu, isn't it gorgeous? You love that building? One of the best schools in the country, right? We're building new playgrounds. We're building new pools, right? We have $1.8 billion to rebuild schools and to reinvest in the old ones we have. We never think about maintenance because just for some reason we don't think that far. And so we want to do that, and we try to do that, and we try to build that into everything that we do. All right, so it's a very good point. It's one of the easiest things to cut, right, because people don't see it. We do this in our homes all the time. All of us do it, right? When things get tough, the air condition breaks, whatever, we're tight on money. Let me kind of cut down on maintenance. Let me see if I can do something else. And unfortunately, if that practice gets to be a habit, at the end of the day, when you try to fix the thing, it's a lot more expensive than it would have been if you would have kept it up. So that's a management practice, right, that we have to get a lot better at the city. But I thank you for raising it because it's really important. And yes, I agree with you. We need to do a better job of cleaning up the city. The city, and this is all of us, by the way. Can I just tell you something, and maybe y'all want to throw me out of here? The way things get dirty is that people throw things on the ground. Now, the mayor and the city council don't throw everything on the ground, right? So when you go to a park and you're having a picnic with your family, I know you kind of think that everybody's supposed to come pick up after you, but it'd be nice if you picked up after yourself, right? It would be nice if you didn't throw something out your window on the street, or if you passed by something, you picked it up. That would be good, right? Because that's like an evacuation. You know, when they say, well, they didn't do a good job evacuating. If everybody would evacuate when they were supposed to, as hard as it is, when something bad happened and we had to rescue, if we only had 2% of folks we had to rescue, the rescue would go much better if we had the 40%. So we got to kind of together just kind of say it's unacceptable for the city to be dirty. And then after that, if we don't clean up, you can say they do a rotten job. But if we have to clean up after everybody who doesn't clean up after themselves, that gets to be hard. So that's about personal responsibility. We got to think through that. And yes, we have to do a much better job of getting our equipment in shape, getting our crews out there, cutting the grass when we're supposed to, picking up the trash when we're supposed to, cleaning the streets. And we're going to do that and make that happen. All right. Mary Kay Lohr, to thank you for this. You talked about overgrown lots. Huge problem, right? Huge problem because we got a lot of blighted property. People have left their property. They're not taking care of it. There's some properties that we can't go on. There's some properties that we can. But this is a huge financial burden that's coming our way because Louisiana Land Trust, that's the state entity that took possession of the houses that people gave back to the state and they knocked them down. They're full of grass. And this is a problem all over. And we're trying to figure out how to actually make that happen, create jobs by doing that, and try to find the funding for it. If there's something that is in the imminent danger, that's something that the streets department can help work on. But you can understand, if we started cutting everybody's private lawn with your money, that gets to be like $200 million a year really quick that we take away from maintenance, right? Or NORD or whatever. And so I hear you. But if there's a specific problem, if you'll talk to them about it, that would be great. All right, Ian, thank you so much. General Meyer, unsafe for pedestrians. That's like with bicycles. We got to figure out exactly what that is. So Cedric, would you talk to Mr. Ian after and walk through that? And then on top of that, I'm going to let Kristen step in here for a second and tell you about Joe Ellen Smith Hospital.
Thank you. I was just going to say that Orleans Parish School Board just recently purchased that property. So I'm not sure if everybody knows that. And the plan is actually to build another school. Right now, they're going to be using it for transitional space as they build other schools and transition the students there and then move them back in. But I think their long-term plan is to build another school at that site.
Thank you, Kristen. Raylyn, Ms. Heitmeyer, it's nice to see you. How are you? Thank you. The streets are awful. Got that, right? And don't forget Berman Heights. And you came to be a cheerleader. So we got that? Y'all understand that? The worst streets in the city in Berman Heights. That's what you, no, they're not. No, I'm laughing because everywhere I go, of course, all the streets in the city are awful. Everywhere. And we laugh about it because it's just bad. And we got to fix it. And I can assure you that the problem is all over the place. And, we want to deal with the things right now that are major emergencies, that are dangerous. And then again, like I said, long-term, work on it is something we got to do. Mr. Jackson, thank you so much. Your issue is with property taxes. Yeah, you know that the city doesn't do property taxes. The assessor does. I think the assessor, I'm not sure he was able to make it tonight because the books have been open. But we can have a staff member speak to you, please. And then after it's over, we'll direct you to Mr. Mr. Jackson, thank you. I will talk with you after, or you can, if you think one of my team can help you with that. But the issue that you spoke about, you said your property taxes went up 300%. And we'll talk about access to your property. If you will talk to Mr. Grant after, we'll address your concern for you. Thank you. All right, Larry Carbo. Great idea. Unfortunately, the kind of same answer for Mr. Jackson. You talked about using the internet to notify potential jurors whether they can come or not. Alan, will you stand up? Alan is my chief technology officer, but the courts are the ones that do that. They're not connected to us and we don't manage them. One of the things we try to do is help support them, but we can take your information and we'll give it to the courts because that's a great idea. Everything, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, that we could do online, we should do online. And the reason this is important is because eventually we're going to have to rebuild City Hall. The building's old, it's nasty, it doesn't have hot water. We kind of keep it going with a shoestring. But eventually we're going to have to build a new one sometime. Maybe we'll do it in 8 years. Maybe we'll do it in 30 years. I don't know. But the question is going to be when you build it, how big does it have to be? Well, guess what? With technology, you really don't need as much space as you used to have. And by the way, anything you can do from home on computer, you ought to be able to do so that you never have to come to City Hall, right? Well, number one, you might really enjoy that, not having to come. And it might be faster for you. But more importantly, the thing that you have to come to can be a lot smaller physically than it is right now. And anything that we can do online, look, if you get a ticket, unfortunately, I want to be able for you to pay your ticket quick. If you need a business permit, maybe you don't really have to come. If you're selling real estate and you need information, you used to have to go down to the Terrell Archives and conveyance office. If you don't have to go, that's all great. So anything that we can do, and that's why Alan is here on our side, but he'll put you in touch with the courts on the jury notice thing because I think it's a great idea. All right, Debbie Carpenter, Elmwood Park. When will we get streets and drainage? It's horrific. Old Berman Highway. Where are you? Debbie, you're sitting over there, right? Okay. If maybe you can talk to us after, I'll try to figure out what the answer to that is. You want to talk about it? All right, can you talk to Kristen after? Because she says she has at least some information for you on that. All right, that's number one. I'm almost finished. By the way, we had 31, and I'm on number 20. All right, Debbie Mickens. When is the next phase for Federal City? General Mize, will you stand up? This is General Mize. General Mize, along with a lot of other people. General Mize, thank you for your commitment. So you might want to speak to him, really, because our question wasn't really about when the next phase was. It's like whenever it is, can we please coordinate, right? Because when it was getting built, evidently there was a lack of communication between the contractors and the neighbors, and there was some confusion about how that happened. So here's a common problem with a lot of progress. You know, why is the street being built? Because I can't open my business. How can you make it easier? This is really an important note, and we have this all over, and we got to get better at it. But Jeremiah, is there going to be another phase? When's it going to start? All right. Okay. And so what I'd like to ask you to do, and I know that you will, is make sure now that you touch base with the neighborhood organizations, and Jackie and Kristen work with them, just to make sure we coordinate. Now, I'll give you an example, if you will. Thank you, General. They redid Magazine Street. And that's a good thing, right? They got a bunch of money to redo Magazine Street, but all the Magazine Street merchants were really upset about it. So why are you upset about it? We're upset because if it closes our business for too long, we're going to go bankrupt. Good. So what we did was we said, why don't you come together? Let's get together with the state, the city, and let's talk about how y'all have the project designed. As a consequence of those meetings, what they did was they broke the project up into 4 sections. And they did 1 section first, then 2, then 3, then 4. And they listened to the season, right, to make sure that they didn't have it closed during the highest season. Now, there was an inconvenience, but the inconvenience was much, much better because of that coordination. And so we want to try to do that on all major projects. And so I've asked the streets department, I've asked my deputy mayor for operations, and all these guys, y'all think about that when you're doing it, and the neighbors can tell you. And so, ma'am, if you would get together with General Mize after, you guys can talk a little bit about that. All right. Let's see. Vince Craig. Okay, Mr. Craig. Scott Hutchison, are you here? Okay. Mr. Craig, are you still with us? You talked to me about the Newton area. I want you to talk to Scott. Scott is the point person for cultural development and economic development as it relates to culture. When I had the pleasure of serving as your lieutenant governor, we really worked hard to try to help recreate main streets, right? So think about Oak Street. Think about Ferret Street. Think about St. Claude Avenue. Anywhere where there was an old town. So think about old Algiers, right? And think about Newton. And so I told you also that government's not spending as much money, so you got to find another way. So what we did was we created something called the Cultural Products District. The state authorized cities, city councils, to identify certain areas geographically. And if you fall in that geographic area and you produce an original piece of artwork, or anything creative, and you sell it, there's no tax applied to it. So what happened was, it was a little private sector incentive, right? And we laid some old Main Street money on top of that, which helps people create facades. You can now see a street like Ferret. It's kind of in the middle of its new rebirth. You might want to go look at it. It's not quite where Oak Street is. You can look at what those private sector incentives did with some historic preservation and tax credit money to actually rebuild an old section of town, especially as it relates to culture, art, and music and infrastructure. Scott was the point person on that for the state. He came to work with us in the city of New Orleans, and if you'll speak to him and the council member, they want to talk to you about ideas that they have. All right? Okay. Nick Scramuzza, Lost Love Lounge in Marigny. Jackie, you may want to talk to him after about the master plan. He had an issue with where Franklin fits in that. Jackie's the expert on master plan. But he also talked about public safety, really important. You know, people got to be safe going to and from things. But here's the thing that he raised, and actually, I'd like to give you an award, but you're the second person who raised it, because one gentleman raised it at the last meeting. He actually read the document that we gave him, and he said, I see from this document, actually, he said, Mr. Mayor, you know, you're spending 58% on public safety, police and fire, 2, 3, and 17% on families and children. I said, how do you know that? He said, well, you told me. It's in your document. All right, so that's why we produced the document. Now, this is a policy decision for all of you, because that's actually right. We're spending 58% of our money on public safety. The police department and the fire department, they are the two largest departments, and EMS, right? They're the three largest departments in the government, but we're also only spending 2% on children and a little bit on families. And so he says that's got to mean that you're focusing on fixing a problem after there's something happens as opposed to preventing it from occurring. I would say this to you. You're absolutely correct. That's the way it is now. The real trick is how you find a way to transition into the complete opposite. So wouldn't it be great if the city was safe enough to where you only had to spend 2% on that and you spend all your money on police and fire? But I got to tell you, logistically, that's really hard, but it's a goal that we have to think about. And at the end of the day, you got to think about where you want us to spend your money, and that's going to be a priority that you set. So it's a desire for us. We're aware of it. We know that prevention is much better than coming in and try to fix it, and we have to try to figure out a way to get from one to the other. But I thank you for pointing that out. Ms. Williams, thank you so much. Now, Ms. Williams, cut off, and everything you say about it is absolutely correct. You know that we've been working hard. I came out there. I was painting myself that Saturday morning we were together. We have money to fix the center that we're working on right now. But she makes a great point about cutoff center. It is kind of a way. It's kind of people don't think about it, and we got to do it. And I saw on your note about cold case. The chief is here. I want you to y'all meet when it's over and talk about it. So I saw, even though you didn't talk about it, I saw it on your card. Amen. All right. Gene Dakota Jr. You talked about Q. You made a little bit of an erroneous factual statement. Q is not a not-for-profit that gets city money. That's a state entity. The names that were mentioned in that was a gentleman that worked for us at one time that doesn't anymore, and then the name of Barbara Major, who is the chairman of the RTA. And there's a look into that. We want to continue to tell people you got to do the right thing the right way. And yes, we continue always to work on waste, fraud, abuse, and ethical behavior, and we will continue to do that. Okay, he asked me, I'm gonna answer you briefly, but I don't want to, again, we always do business with tons of not-for-profits. That's called partnerships with the not-for-profits in the private sector. It's a customary way of doing business. What you got to do is make sure that people that you're doing business with are doing the right thing and are not wasting money. And we have very tight places, and when we find out that it's not, we end the relationship with them. All right, let's see. Mike Manning, Somerset, you're the second person that mentioned that, talked about it. Would you get together with Cedric? Cedric, where are you? Somerset, Cedric. Mr. Manning, can you stand up for me? Again? Where are you? He did? Okay. Dalton, Holiday Drive. Okay. Cedric, I don't understand this, but I agree with him. If for some reason a contractor in the middle of doing one of our projects knocks out the lights, we don't have to wait until the project's finished to get the lights back on, right? Okay, so we're going to fix that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, let me say this. Hold on a second. I'm going to do everything I can to fix it. But if I go order them to do it and they say, take me to court because I'm not doing it, I'm going to take them to court, all right? But I can't go fix the light myself. But we're going to find a way to get that done. But this happened to me with Armstrong Park. Show up, bad deal with Armstrong Park. We tell them to open it. The people skate out of there. We sue the bonding company. We're in court for 6 months. People say, open the park. I said, I can, but it's going to cost you another $3 million. Do you want me to waste the $3 million that I gave him, or you want me to go get it from the guy that they said, man, sue the guy? Okay, so we got to wait a little bit longer. But it's my intent. I want you to know this because you're not the only street where this happens. You got a couple of other ones on St. Charles Avenue on Carrollton right now where they're relaying the wood that goes under the tracks. The same exact thing happened where for 3 blocks they clipped something and the lights went out, and the lights need to get put back on. And so Cedric is going to take responsibility for talking to them about that. And so if you want to touch base with him about it, that is a city project, right? Right, and we're overseeing the project. So again, we have to do a better job of making sure that if it's a city project, we're managing the work. And on top of that, making sure that the grass is cut. Just because there's construction going on at a site doesn't mean that we don't have to cut the grass, right? So we can do that, can't we? Yes, she said yes. Mr. Charles Rice Sr. was not here. I don't know if he came back, but I'll talk to you after. Yvonne, Walnut Bend, I hear you. Street lights need to be fixed. Site has to be kept up, and we can't wait till the project is finished. Same exact problem, right? So, Yvonne, where are you? I think she's here. All right, so here's the thing. Last year, y'all gave us more money. You told us to fix lights. We have fixed 28,000 lights. I don't know where that light is in that line, but we can find out for you. So if it was a light that had been out before, we're knocking it down really, really fast. We're way ahead of our marks. I don't know where the lights are that you're talking about, but if you'll talk to Cedric, we'll get you an answer to that. But as a general rule, and this is a message to all you guys, we don't have to wait till the project is over to put the light back on if during construction they broke the light, right? And we'll get on them about that. All right, and Mr. Schmidt, did you clean house of the previous mayor's appointees? The answer is this, is that when I came into office, I did a top-to-bottom assessment of people that worked there. I got rid of the people immediately that I knew I had to get rid of. I brought in a ton of new, really smart people, and I kept a couple of people. Over that time, some of those people that I have kept and some of the people that I have hired, I fired because they weren't doing a good job, and I'll keep doing that. I didn't fire people because they worked for Mayor Nagin, and I didn't keep people before they worked. Everybody got a fresh look. I think Judy ran the transition, Judy Reese-Morris. I think we had 1,500 people that applied. We did 1,500 interviews, and we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Some people had really great subject matter expertise and done a good job. Not everybody did, and so we brought in mostly new people. But there were a couple people from Mayor Nagin's administration who had actually been there, right, during the 4 or 5 previous administrations who have great subject matter expertise that I thought did a good job, and I kept them. But every one of them every day knows that nobody's job is sacred, and that if you don't produce, whether I hired you or whether I kept you on, you could not be there. And that's called accountability, and we'll continue to do that. Ultimately, I am accountable to you, and they are accountable to all of us. And so that's why we have these measures. So next year, if we come see you and you tell me somebody didn't call you back, that's a problem. Right? Right? Yeah, so I told them, but by the way, it's not a surprise. They know this. I'm going to tell them this tomorrow morning. I told them, because last year, remember when I came? See these yellow sheets of paper? I actually keep them. And I can tell you what anybody in here said last year, right? Pretty much I remember, but I can go back and tell you. And I told them the reason why I kept those is because next year when we go back, somebody's going to stand up and say, Mr. Mayor, you told me you were going to do something, and you know what? You didn't do it, right? So you made me an honest man. Yeah, my mother is Italian. My maiden name was Machika. We're from Sicily. I know I don't look like it, but it's true. I'm just saying, you know, right? So in any event, we really want to try to get this right. Now, we're not going to hit all of our marks. I can tell you now that we got a lot of work to do. But we're trying hard, we're measuring ourselves, and where we don't hit our marks, we want to get better. So we need you to continue to tell us that. So with that, that was the last one. It's 8:07. We're 7 minutes after when I said the meeting was going to end. So I'm going to call this meeting to a close, if you don't mind. I want to thank you all for that. I want to reiterate before we close, all right? The budget process, this is the beginning. I am going to submit a budget to the city council in October, all right? And then they're going to start having hearings. So this budget's going to reflect what the people have said. You have to show up at the hearings if you want to know what the council is thinking about and deliberating, and then the council will vote on it, and then we'll take that budget, and starting on January 1st of next year, we will implement it. That's number one. Number two, customer service is very, very important to us. That does not mean you're going to get the answer that you want, but you certainly should get a response. So if you call somebody in my administration and you don't get a phone call back, I want to know about it, all right? Because they've been instructed to return phone calls, all right? And they are going to do that, and we're going to try. We're not going to hit the mark all the time. We're going to miss some of it, but that is my expectation of this group. And third, what I would like you to do, if you have a specific issue that you did not get to speak on this microphone about, I'm going to stand right here, all right? And I would, again, ask you to respect other people's time. Take no more than 2 minutes. I won't leave until the last person has a chance to say something. If you've already said something, you know, you spoke your piece. If you needed to speak to somebody over here, remember, we have the entirety of city government over here. So the streets department, the police department, the fire department, the health department, Park and Parkways is over here. I'll put you all in touch with each other so you can see each other. Please, they're going to stay here for a couple of minutes so you can talk to them. Okay, so gone once, gone twice. Thank you very much. God bless you. Y'all did a great job.
I've been asked to remind you all that tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. that there will be a ribbon cutting and an open house at the International School of Louisiana.